Former President Jacob Zuma has been sentenced to 15 months imprisonment, unsuspended. He has to report to a police station of his choice, either in Calland, KZN, or somewhere in Johannesburg by Sunday, failing which the Minister of Police, and the National Commissioner of Police, must ensure within 3 days from Sunday that he does make his way to prison. That was a sentence handed down earlier today by the acting Chief Justice, that's Judge Sisi Kampepe, in the Constitutional Court. Well, a lot of questions arising this. We are bringing you the freshest possible analysis and reaction, of course, here on eNCA to this major ruling. I'm joined now this hour on the Midday View by the UCT constitutional law professor and political commentator Richard Calland and political analyst Ongama Mtimka. Gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to the Midday View. Still fresh news. Many people are still digesting the news, and some people are yet to study the whole ruling. We saw a message earlier when we tried to reach out to the ANC, the governing party, to which, of course, Jacob Zuma belongs to and is a veteran. And we got a response from the Deputy Secretary General, that's Jesse Duarte, saying, at this stage, we are starting the judgment and the NEC will discuss the consequences. That's the National Executive Committee. So still more to come. But for now, can I start with you, Prof? Can I just start with you? What do you make of this ruling?
Well, clearly, Dan, it's a very important moment. It's not just a big news story. It's an important moment for the Constitution, because once again, the Constitution has been tested. And once again, in fact, it's been tested by Mr. Zuma specifically. And yet again, the Constitution has proved that it's more than a piece of paper. It has been stress tested and it's come through that test. And I thought the judgment today was remarkable, not just for the outcome, which is extraordinary itself, that a former president will now have to serve jail time because of his contempt, but also because of the way the judgment was framed, the way it was constructed, and the language that it used. Very purposeful, very careful, very clear-minded, and a very strong statement that nobody is above the law, that all of us are equal before the law.
I mean, the acting Chief Justice, that's the Judge Sisi Kampepe, the tone and the language and the choice of words, I mean, in writing this together, you can see they had to think through very carefully. This was the majority ruling, and did she hit the nail on the head in terms of the tone? I mean, there was silence in court, we're told, after the reading of the judgment. There was no buzz or nothing. It was like, whoop, what has just happened? Wow.
Yes, it was spellbinding, and I think that everybody there would have been struck by the tone and the strength of the tone. Of course, some people have called it emotional, including the spokesperson for the Jacob Zuma Foundation, but in my view, it wasn't emotional. What it was an ardent, fierce, and yes, passionate defense of the Constitution. And one mustn't lose sight of the fact that judges are human beings. And they are people who care greatly about the Constitution, in my view. The court has a long track record in terms of defending the Constitution and giving effect to the Constitution. And so when someone, a former president, attacks the integrity, impugns the dignity and the honesty of the individual judges on the court, I think they're entitled to be very concerned, and they're entitled not to be angry or emotional, but they're entitled to defend their position as the court. And that's exactly what we saw in the majority judgment today.
Yeah, I just want to, Ongama, I'm coming to you from the political side of things just now. Just bear with me. I'm reading here one of the paragraphs, paragraph 56, how the Judge Sisi Kampepe starts and how it's written. She says, however, I'm alive to the fact that the case before us is so markedly distinct from any matter that has preceded it. So we're talking about a precedent-setting issue here, that it exceeds the expectations of legal precedent. The result is that despite my efforts, I have found very little solace in our jurisprudence. The extent and gravity of the contempt in this matter is singularly unprecedented and absolutely inimitable. So, I mean, we are in uncharted water here, uncharted territory.
That's right. And Dan, the Justice, the acting Chief Justice, went on later to say that the case was exceptional, not because they were treating Mr. Zuma in an exceptional way, but because the facts of the matter were exceptional. It is very, very rare for anybody who faces contempt proceedings to simply ignore the court and refuse to appear before it or give evidence or present arguments, as Mr. Zuma did. Normally, when people face contempt, they are trying everything within their power to reduce their sentence, to mitigate their sentence. And Mr. Zuma did the opposite. He not only refused to appear, refused to present arguments, but he wrote a series of public letters in which he attacked the integrity of the court and attacked the Constitution, accused the judges of being corrupt, and so on. So he really is the victim of his own, he's the architect of his own misfortune in that sense. And he is to blame for that predicament in which he found himself today.
In those public opinion pieces, Ongama, in those statements that he made and issued, it looks like at every stage he sought to politicize the whole issue, seeing himself as a political victim, even of the judiciary, which in our state is independent.
Yeah, but then I think we must remember here that this was fundamentally about a battle which former President Jacob Zuma thought was best to fight, given the fact that he himself, as it became apparent, did not feel that he had any way to deal with the allegations he's facing at the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture in a way that could help him retain the image he has constructed for himself, that he was the ultimate revolutionary and the allegations against him were nothing but a witch hunt. So faced between the choice of complying with the process and redeeming his reputation there and coming up with a political strategy of how to continue to frame himself as the ultimate powerful figure by attacking the Constitution, that's what he chose. So it was never going to be him applying himself to the substantive issues that were either at the level of the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture or the resultant Constitutional Court process, because he derived greater value from the political posturing in itself rather than the applying himself to the issues that were being raised. So I quite agree with Prof when he says that the way that the judgment is framed then responds not only to the issues of the case itself, but the politics of the case. In the judge having, for example, taken some of the themes around, for example, Jacob Zuma being treated special, the issue of the correctness or lack thereof of a process that was against him at the Zondo inquiry, or the need for him to salvage himself and at least be part of the contempt proceedings, or before then the hearing of the matter by the Constitutional Court in order to determine what was the right, whether the recourse that was sought by the Commission could be granted. So for me, it was an excellent performance that not only reasserted the preeminence of the rule of law and the doctrine of constitutionalism, but also the politics of having the Constitutional Court being the final arbiter of disputes in a democracy.
And I guess with the rule of law, the way she was phrasing some of the paragraphs and the findings, it was around the issue of ensuring judicial integrity. And the matter of contempt of court, she was saying that it looks like Mr. Jacob Zuma would not refrain even going forward to be of contempt of court. And I think this is trying to send a message, Prof, of the supremacy of our Constitution and the need for all of us to understand that none of us are above the law.
Yes, and indeed the judgment begins with some eloquent phrasing about the lofty responsibility of judges to uphold the law, and then in the next paragraph the concomitant equivalent duty of citizens for us to uphold and obey the law. And that is the social contract that lies at the heart of any democracy in which the rule of law is sacrosanct. And today's judgment was about that supremacy of the Constitution and about the sacrosanct nature of the rule of law. And I agree entirely with Ongama Mtimka that Jacob Zuma was challenging that because he'd chosen to abandon his long-held Stalingrad legal strategy in favour of making himself some kind of political victim and trying to rally political forces behind him. And of course, in the coming days, no doubt there will be some more of that. The spectacle, no doubt, of him presenting himself to the police in the next few days. But that will pass. And in the end, the Constitution will survive and sustain itself.
Now, Ongama, as we're heading towards the end of this quick discussion here, politically now, we're beginning to hear some early noises already. My colleague, our reporter, senior reporter, Spamandla Goga, outside the Nkandla homestead in KZN a short while ago, sentiment on the ground as the news is filtering through, and some of those uniformed MK, MVA members, they're saying that they're getting calls from elsewhere. People are going to go there and show support. Politically, though, I mean, this is a legal case and everything. Politically, where does this now live, a Jacob Zuma, especially when I read that message earlier from the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, Jesse Duarte, that was sent to us, one of our producers, when we tried to reach out to the ANC, that they are studying this, and then they'll come up later about the consequences. What should we expect? What can we realistically expect now, politically?
I think whatever is happening in Nkandla will be a storm in a teacup. What I like about South Africa's process of transitioning to democracy was the consolidation of various armies into one in creating the South African National Defence Force. And what that did was it kind of neutralized agitations for exploiting conflicts, armed conflicts, in order to force political opponents or, in fact, even judicial processes to capitulate because of a threat of, a political instability which may turn violent. So I think that that will be a moment of excitement which will pass, and former President Jacob Zuma will go into jail. And in terms of him being a factor or a force in succession politics of the party, I think his role is significantly reduced. They are suffering significant setbacks as a faction. The consolidation in the support base of President Cyril Ramaphosa reached an important threshold when sometime last year his camp felt that they could now boldly take decisions which favored them unilaterally and no longer felt beholden to the stalemate of the Nasrec conference. So this that power has been gradually declining, and I don't think that there will be an event except there was a coalescing of national and foreign interests that could fund that campaign. Otherwise, on its own, it cannot regain significantly to threaten the emerging political order.
Yeah, as we conclude, I mean, we've lost the connection now to the Prof, but I want to conclude with you, Ongama. I mean, no matter how we look at this, it is a historically significant moment in the country. The fact that in South Africa, in democratic South Africa, a former head of state is going to jail. I mean, a court of law, the Apex, has found a former head of state and they're holding him directly accountable for contempt of court because he refused to engage with the court. He didn't even go and argue his case when the order was given for him to go and testify at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. I mean, this judgment is momentous on all fronts, not just legally, it is also politically important. It's sending a very big message to former statesmen and to be in this country that if you're found guilty, you're not above the law.
Yes, Britain, but what we must not forget is that Jacob Zuma is going to court today out of his own strategic political gambits, as opposed to there was always an attempt to have him go to court. When the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture started, the outcome that was envisaged was not a President Zuma that goes to court. It was establishing the truth of the matter and obviously recommending whatever corrective action would have come. But out of his own political miscalculation as far as I'm concerned. He ends up in jail a lot quicker than even the report being completed on the inquiry into state capture.
Okay, thank you very much. Ongama Mtimka there, political analyst, and earlier we also heard from Richard Calland, a constitutional law professor from the University of Cape Town.